ensuring your data remains confidential, ensuring that the people who need to see the data or need to have access to the data have access, and those who don't, internally or externally, are kept at bay. The integrity of the data is also critical in a lot of instances, and ensuring that your data is accurate and true and not tampered with also leads to making good decisions and taking your business in the right direction through your strategy. Availability of data is critical too. As I mentioned before, services and the way we're disrupting markets see data required to be available in real time in order to make fast and agile decisions, but also servicing our customers to have a competitive edge against other players in the market is critical. The one thing I need to be clear about though is not all three of these principles need to be applied together at the same time. An example of that is you jump on your train timetable app. That is not confidential. Everyone has access to the train timetable. The integrity of that data is critical because we want to make sure our trains are running on time, but also that trains are not arriving at the same platform at the same time. And the availability of data is from an end user perspective, is quite important so that we can make sure we're making our appointments and meetings and whatnot. When moving to cloud, regardless of how you consume your service, our service providers, as mentioned before, have told us we can do this better. But ultimately, there's one component that does not abdicate you from your responsibility of the data security, regardless of where it resides. And the data itself is a common component that everyone needs to address, and it's not something you can outsource to your cloud service provider. Compliance obligations, typically with your common ones like data breach notification. Any organisation that's working or has to comply with GDPR prudential standards will see the common denominator here is that data is your responsibility regardless of where it resides. So we've talked about what are some of the core principles around great data security. The next question we get asked is, how do you actually do it? And how do you do it well? And how do we keep it simple? There's a perception that it's not an easy task to deploy or run a good data security program. And we've sort of broken it down into three key areas organisations work with us on to deploy a data security program. First piece is understanding where your data is and what data you have, and also classifying it so that you can run your compliance programs effectively, and you know where to focus your time and effort. Second piece is having a unified approach to data security to protect data at rest, in motion, and also in use across your on-prem environment as well as your cloud and hybrid environments as well. And the third piece is having a scalable, automated control of your data security and access policies, as well as control of the keys that are found, and which makes a good foundation to a good data security program. Taking a simple approach like this reduces a lot of overhead and saves time, which ultimately reduces your organisational risk associated with your critical and sensitive data. So let's spend a few moments going into each of these components to give you a bit of an idea in terms of how we've helped organisations do this. So the first piece, and off the back of a number of incidents that's happened over the last 12 months, we get engaged to help organisations identify their data assets. And when we look at identifying their data assets, the sprawl is very real. Understanding where it resides, and also the ability to classify that data so we know what controls need to be put in place to secure that data is a challenge. Once you've located that sensitive data, you also need to maintain visibility, and that's the second challenge a lot of organisations have that we talk to on a regular basis is how do they monitor continuously in automated fashion their digital platforms to assure data security is being sustained. Because at the end of the day, applying an effective discovery and classification program will help the security, effective data security compliance for your operational efficiency in your organisation. Then we move, once we've identified where the data is and we've run the classification program, we need to protect that data, okay? And ultimately, we need to apply the appropriate controls, the appropriate protection on the data, pending the compliance programs or the internal compliance requirements that we see fit for that particular data. Security sensitive data can take place or can take shape in many forms, and a few of those would look like anonymizing that data, masking the data. So anyone who's been in payments, you'll see when you make credit card payments, the tokenization, the masking of your credit card numbers is quite crucial, because we don't need that exposed to the broader community. But having highly granular access controls to those who need to see it at a just-in-time access point is critical to having a successful data security strategy in the protection space. What we're looking to do here is also reduce the manual process in order to apply these protection controls to your critical data assets as well, wherever possible. And then the final piece, once we've protected that data, the next piece is how do we apply a centralized control over all those data assets and effectively gain some operational efficiency from a centralized platform. So there's a few key areas that we focus on. We work with organizations to secure their data in cloud, but also in a hybrid or on-prem environment as they transition into cloud platforms, is to have good cryptographic key lifecycle management, which is critical to your data assets and control of your data assets. Then identify and authenticate rules over which users, but also systems and processes, which is something that's we've found has been a challenge as well, can access critical data assets. So we're aware of what's touching our data at all points in time and blocking any unauthorized or untrusted sources touching our data as well. When working in data-dependent environments, regardless of the platform infrastructure, your data should be at front of mind, especially when it comes to our sensitive and critical data assets. Our industry needs to take control of the process across the organisation. We see a lot of organisations now have struggled with segmentation and silos, and they've engaged us to help centralise a service layer in order to be able to deploy a good strategy, but also retain control of the data wherever it resides. And a quick little use case in terms of how we've done this successfully in the past. So it looks quite generic. This is a conversation we have over and over again in a number of industries, as well as a finance and payment sector as well. So we had an organisation, organisation had a complex hybrid environment moving to cloud. Centralisation of control was required, as they had cloud platforms, they had platform as a service, they had on-prem environments, they were sharing data with third parties, supply chain. And effectively, Talis worked with this end user, to improve their posture by centralising their key management and key security of their data assets in cloud, as well as their on-prem technologies, and provided a separation of duties between the cloud domain team, the database team, or the DBA team, and gave the cyber team control and visibility of those data assets across a number of technologies, including Salesforce, ServiceNow, and some public cloud providers there. So just as a bit of a quick wrap up, I know we're conscious of time as well. One thing, if anything to take away from today is we've done a great job at securing around our core data assets, and if we take a different path and actually look and secure our critical data assets itself, it'll make our jobs, our lives a lot easier, but it makes our community a safer place to operate in from a digital perspective as well. Happy to take some questions. Our booth is just outside, and if you want to take the continued discussion further, we'll be there to help you. Thank you.
There were plenty of questions in Slido unanswered.